Imagine a people wandering in the desert. They were once slaves, their days dictated by the crack of a whip and the demands of a harsh master. Now, they are free. But freedom can be confusing. Which way do they go? How should they live? What does it mean to be a community, a family, a nation under God? This was the situation for the Israelites after God miraculously delivered them from Egypt. They stood at the foot of a smoking, trembling mountain, waiting for a word from the one who had set them free. God didn't leave them guessing. He didn't abandon them to the chaos of their own impulses. He gave them a gift. This gift was the law. We often think of laws as restrictive, a list of don'ts designed to take away fun. But God's law was different. It was a gift of guidance, a roadmap for living well. It was like a loving father giving his children instructions on how to build a safe and beautiful home. He was showing them how to live in a way that brings life, not death, order, not chaos, and blessing, not cursing. The law was a blueprint for a brand new way of life, a life of purpose and dignity, lived in relationship with the God who had chosen them and loved them first. The word holy can sound intimidating. It might bring to mind images of stained glass saints or people who seem impossibly perfect. But the biblical idea of holiness is much simpler and more beautiful than that. At its core, to be holy means to be set apart. Think of a special set of dishes your grandmother only uses for holiday dinners. They are set apart from the everyday plates. They are reserved for a special purpose, to honor the occasion and the guests. In the same way, God called his people to be holy, to be set apart for him. They were to be different from the nations around them. While other cultures worshipped lifeless idols, pursued their own selfish desires, and lived in cycles of violence and greed, God's people were to be set apart for a higher purpose. They were to be a reflection of God's own character. Leviticus chapter 19 verse 2 gives us the clearest possible command, straight from God. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. This is the heart of it all. We are not called to be holy based on our own strength or our own ideas of what is good. We are called to be holy because the God we serve is holy. Our holiness is a reflection of his. When God spoke from the mountain, he didn't begin with a complicated legal code. He started with 10 simple, powerful statements. We call them the 10 Commandments, but they could also be called the 10 Words of Life. They are the foundational pillars upon which a holy life is built. They are not arbitrary rules. They are descriptions of what a life of love for God and love for others actually looks like. The first 4 words teach us how to love God, and the last 6 teach us how to love our neighbors. It all begins with our relationship with him. The first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me, sets the tone for everything else. It's a call to exclusive devotion. This commandment protects the people from the empty promises of idols made of wood and stone, which can never love them back or save them. It's an invitation to pour all our worship and trust into the only one who is worthy of it. The next few commandments flow from this one. We are told not to make idols, not to misuse God's name, and to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. After the foundational commands in Exodus, the book of Leviticus goes deeper. It can seem like a strange book, full of detailed laws about sacrifices and cleanliness, but tucked within it is a beautiful chapter, Leviticus 19, that shows how holiness is meant to be lived out in the smallest details of everyday life. For example, it says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, you shall leave them for the poor and the sojourner. This is a reflection of God's own generosity. The law in Leviticus 19 also reflects God's justice. It commands, you shall do no injustice in court, you shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor. God is a God of perfect justice, who sees all people as equal in his sight. He doesn't favor the rich or the poor, he values truth and fairness. By practicing impartial justice in their own communities, the people were reflecting God's perfect standard. From business ethics, you shall not have in your bag 2 kinds of weights, to personal relationships, you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge. Leviticus 19 connects the dots between God's holy character and our human conduct. In Leviticus 19, this principle is summed up in one of the most famous commands in the entire Bible. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. This is the positive expression of the last 6 commandments. It is the goal. As Moses prepared the people to enter the promised land, he knew they needed more than just a list of rules. They needed a core principle, a heartbeat that would animate the entire law. In the book of Deuteronomy, he gives them just that. He gathers the people and delivers a message that has become the central confession of faith for God's people for millennia. It is known as the Shema, and it begins with these powerful words, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." This is a declaration of who God is, the one and only undivided sovereign Lord of all. Flowing directly from this declaration of who God is comes the great commandment of what our response should be. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. This is the ultimate summary of the first 4 commandments and the very essence of a holy life. It is a call to a total all-encompassing love. It's not about a half-hearted affection or a part-time devotion. God, who is one, calls for our whole undivided being in response. This commandment transforms the law from a cold external code into a warm internal passion. It reveals that the ultimate goal of all the rules is not just rule-keeping, but a loving relationship. God doesn't just want robots who follow orders. He wants children who love Him with every fiber of their being. When this love is the motivation, obedience is no longer a burden. It becomes a joy. It becomes our natural response to the one who is everything to us. This is the true heartbeat of holiness, a passionate, all-consuming love for God. God's desire was never for His law to be a forgotten document stored away in a dusty ark. He wanted it to be a living, breathing part of the people's daily lives. Right after commanding them to love Him with all their heart, soul, and might, He gives them practical instructions on how to make this a reality. He says, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart." From the heart, the law was then meant to flow into the home. God continues, "You shall teach them diligently to your children." The faith was not meant to be a private affair. It was a legacy to be passed down from one generation to the next. The instruction then expands beyond specific teaching moments into the rhythm of everyday life. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. God's words were to be the topic of conversation throughout the entire day. Finally, God uses vivid imagery to show how central the law should be. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. It is easy to misunderstand the purpose of God's law and see it as a rigid system for earning salvation. One might think, if I just follow all these rules perfectly, then God will have to accept me. But this was never the point. The law was given to a people who had already been saved. Think of it this way. A man adopts a child from a terrible situation. He brings the child into his beautiful, safe home. Then he gives the child some house rules. Don't play with fire, be kind to your siblings, help with chores. Are these rules a way for the child to earn his adoption? No, he is already a beloved son. The rules are given so that the child can live safely and joyfully as a member of the family. They are guidelines for a loving relationship, not a checklist for acceptance. Likewise, God's law is a guide for living in the love we have already been given. Obedience, then, is not the begrudging duty of a slave but the joyful response of a child who loves their father. When we understand that God's commands are for our good, designed for our flourishing, our attitude toward them changes. We obey not out of fear of punishment, but out of a deep love and trust for the one who gave them. Our obedience becomes an act of worship, a way of saying, God, I trust you. I believe your way is best, and I want my life to honor you. The law of God is not just about our vertical relationship with Him, it is just as much about our horizontal relationships with each other. A love for God that does not translate into love for people is incomplete. The last 6 of the 10 commandments make this perfectly clear. Consider the commands. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. These are the basic building blocks of a stable, safe, and loving society. The law goes even deeper, into the realm of our words and our inner desires. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Protects a person's reputation and ensures justice. Lying can destroy lives just as surely as a weapon can. And finally, the law reaches into the heart with, you shall not covet. This command addresses the root of many other sins. Coveting, that restless, greedy desire for what someone else has, is what leads to stealing, adultery, and even murder. In Leviticus 19, this principle is summed up in one of the most famous commands in the entire Bible. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. When we step back and look at the whole picture, we see that God's law is a masterpiece of divine wisdom and love. It's far more than a collection of ancient regulations. It is a timeless blueprint for building a community that reflects the goodness and glory of its Creator. The law teaches us that holiness is not a lonely pursuit of personal perfection, it is a community project. The commands were given to you in the plural, to the people of Israel as a whole. They were to become a holy nation, a kingdom of priests together. This ancient law still speaks to us today. It reveals the unchanging character of God. He is a God of justice and mercy, of faithfulness and love. He cares deeply about how we treat the vulnerable, how we conduct our business, and how we build our families. The law holds up a mirror to us, showing us God's perfect standard and revealing our need for His grace. It reminds us that true life is found not in following our own selfish desires, but in joyfully aligning our lives with the loving will of our Creator. Ultimately, the law was designed to shape a people who could display the love of God to the world. By loving God with their whole being and loving their neighbors as themselves, they were to be a living, breathing advertisement for the goodness of their King. They were to be a city on a hill, a light in the darkness. While we now look to Jesus as the perfect fulfillment of the law, the principles He taught were rooted in these very scriptures. The law remains a beautiful and powerful gift, a guide that shows us the path to becoming a holy people, set apart for God, and overflowing with His love.